Imagine standing in line at a convenience store late at night, exhausted from a double shift, and noticing the cashier's hands are shaking so badly he can barely hold the scanner. You ask him if he's okay, and the answer he finally gives shatters every assumption you had about struggle, survival, and what it really means to help someone. Stay with me till the end. You won't believe what happened when one single mom decided to ask one simple question. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can change lives, please like this video and subscribe to Kindness Stories so we can keep sharing true and inspiring tales. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday in the Bronx, New York. The convenience store on the corner of Jerome Avenue was nearly empty. Just a few late-night shoppers wandering the aisles, grabbing what they needed before heading home. Desiree Johnson, 34, stood near the back of the store holding a gallon of milk and a bag of chips. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her feet ached, she just finished a 14-hour shift at the hospital and wanted nothing more than to crawl into bed. But her kids needed lunches packed for tomorrow, so here she was. 9-year-old Jamal and 6-year-old Aliyah were waiting at home with her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who watched them when Desiree worked late. She'd promised them she'd be home by midnight. She checked her phone. 11:32 p.m. She was cutting it close. She grabbed a box of granola bars and headed to the counter. That's when she noticed the cashier. He looked young, maybe 19 or 20. His name tag read Tommy. He was tall, thin, with dark hair that needed a trim. But what caught Desiree's attention wasn't his appearance, it was his hands. They were shaking. Not a little tremor, not the kind of shake you get from too much caffeine. This was different. His fingers fumbled with the scanner as he tried to ring up the customer ahead of her. He dropped it once, apologized quickly, and picked it up. Desiree frowned. Something wasn't right. The customer ahead paid and left. Tommy exhaled slowly, like he'd just finished running a race. Then he looked up at Desiree and forced a smile. "Evening," he said quietly. "Hey," she replied, placing her items on the counter. He reached for the milk, and his hand shook so badly he nearly knocked it over. He caught it just in time, but barely. Desiree watched him struggle to scan the barcode. Once, twice, 3 times. "You okay?" she asked gently. Tommy glanced up, startled. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a long shift." But Desiree had spent 12 years as a nurse. She'd seen every kind of tremor, shake, and physical symptom there was. This wasn't exhaustion. This was something else. "Your hands are shaking pretty bad," she pressed softly. "You sure you're all right?" Tommy's jaw tightened. He scanned the chips and avoided her eyes. "I'm good, really." But his voice cracked just slightly. Desiree hesitated. She didn't want to embarrass him. She didn't want to push. But every instinct she had as a nurse, as a mother, as a human being, told her something was very wrong. She watched him scan the granola bars. His fingers were pale, too pale, and now that she looked closer, his face was gaunt. His eyes had dark circles under them that makeup couldn't hide. He looked like he hadn't slept in days or eaten. "How much?" she asked. "13.47, he mumbled. She handed him a 20. He took it with both hands to keep from dropping it. When he opened the register to get her change, she saw his hands tremble even more. That's when it hit her. This wasn't nerves. This wasn't a medical condition. This was hunger. She'd seen it before in patients who came into the ER after going days without food. The shaking, the pale skin, the exhaustion that went bone deep. "Tommy," she said quietly. He looked up. "When's the last time you ate?" His eyes widened. For a second, he just stared at her. Then he glanced toward the back of the store, like he was checking if anyone else was listening. I'm fine," he said again, but this time his voice was barely a whisper. Desiree leaned in slightly. "I'm a nurse. I know what hunger looks like, and you look like you haven't eaten in a while." Tommy's face crumbled for just a moment. Then he caught himself. He handed her the change, his hands still shaking. "I can't talk about it," he said quietly. "Please." But Desiree wasn't the type to walk away. She pocketed the change and didn't move. You don't have to tell me everything, but if you need help, I'm not gonna just leave. Tommy's lips parted. He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Then his eyes filled with tears. He stopped, swallowed hard. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Desiree's heart sank. Why? She asked gently. Tommy glanced toward the back again, then leaned in close. His voice dropped to almost nothing. Because I'm living in my car. Desiree felt her stomach drop. You're living in your car? She repeated quietly. Tommy nodded, his eyes darting to the security camera in the corner. I can't talk here. My manager, if he finds out I told a customer, he'll fire me. Where's your car? Desiree asked. Out back, in the employee parking lot. She made a decision right then. I'm buying you food. What do you want? Tommy's eyes widened. No, I can't let you do that. I'm not asking, Desiree said firmly. I'm telling you, pick something. He hesitated, his pride clearly wrestling with his desperation. Finally, he whispered, a sandwich, anything. I don't care. Desiree turned and walked back into the store. She grabbed 2 pre-made sandwiches, a bottle of orange juice, a bag of chips, and a protein bar. She didn't think, she just moved. When she returned to the counter, Tommy was staring at the items like they were gold. I can't pay you back, he said, his voice cracking. I'm not asking you to. She paid for everything, including her original items. Tommy bagged them slowly, his hands still shaking. When he handed her the bag, their eyes met. Why are you doing this? He asked. Desiree looked at him for a long moment. Because somebody did it for me once, and because you deserve to eat. Tommy's throat bobbed. He looked like he might cry again. But then the door to the back office opened. A man in his 40 seconds with a clipboard stepped out. He glanced at Tommy, then at Desiree. Everything okay here? The manager asked, his tone sharp. Yeah, Tommy said quickly. Just finishing up. The manager's eyes lingered on Desiree for a moment, then he turned and walked toward the beverage aisle. Tommy exhaled in relief. Desiree leaned in. What time do you get off? 2 a.m. I'll wait outside, she said. We need to talk. You don't have to. I'll be outside, she repeated. She grabbed her bag and walked out before he could argue. Desiree sat in her beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot, engine off, windows cracked. The cold November air seeped in, but she didn't care. She checked her phone, 11:52 p.m. Mrs. Chen had texted, Kids are asleep. Take your time. Desiree sighed in relief. She thought about Tommy, 19 years old, living in his car, working a night shift at a convenience store just to survive. How did someone so young end up in that situation? She thought about her own kids, about how close she'd come to losing everything after the divorce. If it hadn't been for her sister lending her money for rent, she might have ended up in her car too. She knew what rock bottom looked like. At 2:07 a.m., the store lights dimmed. A minute later, Tommy walked out the side door. He was wearing a thin jacket that didn't look warm enough for November. He glanced around nervously, then spotted Desiree's car. She rolled down the window. Over here? Tommy walked over slowly, his hands shoved in his pockets. Desiree unlocked the passenger door. Get in. It's freezing. He hesitated, then climbed in. The moment he sat down, she could see how exhausted he was. His shoulders sagged. His eyes were half closed. You look like you haven't slept either, Desiree said. I haven't. Not really. She reached into the bag and pulled out one of the sandwiches. Eat! Tommy took it with shaking hands and unwrapped it slowly. The first bite was small, then the second. Then he couldn't stop. He ate like someone who'd forgotten what food tasted like. Desiree didn't say anything. She just watched, her heart breaking. When he finished, he leaned back against the seat and closed his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Tell me what happened, Desiree said gently. How did you end up here? Tommy was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. My parents kicked me out 3 months ago. Why? He swallowed hard. Because I told them I wanted to drop out of college. I was studying engineering, but I hated it. I wanted to be a chef. They said if I quit, I was on my own. Desiree's jaw tightened. So they just threw you out? They said I was being ungrateful, that they weren't going to waste money on a kid who didn't appreciate what they gave him. His voice was hollow. So I left. I've been living in my car ever since. What about friends? Other family? I don't have anyone. My parents made sure of that. They told everyone I was a disappointment. No one wants to help me. Desiree felt anger rising in her chest, not at Tommy, at the people who were supposed to protect him. How are you surviving? She asked. I work here 5 nights a week. I make just enough to keep gas in the car and pay for a gym membership so I can shower. But food. He trailed off. Food's the last thing I can afford. Where do you sleep? In the parking lot behind the store. Sometimes I move to different spots so the cops don't hassle me. Desiree's heart ached. She thought about Jamal and Aaliyah, safe and warm in their beds. She thought about how lucky she was to have a roof over their heads, even if money was tight. And here was this kid, 19 years old, sleeping in a car because he dared to follow his dreams. Have you eaten anything besides what I just gave you? She asked. Tommy shook his head. Not in 2 days. I ran out of money after paying for gas. Desiree sat back and exhaled slowly. She had a choice to make. She could give him some cash, wish him luck, and drive away. That's what most people would do. But she wasn't most people. Tommy, she said, turning to face him, I'm not going to let you keep living like this. His eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean I'm going to help you. I don't know how yet, but I'm not walking away. Tommy's face crumbled. Why? You don't even know me. Desiree smiled sadly. Because kindness isn't about knowing someone. It's about seeing someone who needs help and deciding not to turn away. For the first time all night, Tommy cried. Not just tears, full, body-shaking sobs, like he'd been holding it in for months and finally couldn't anymore. Desiree reached over and squeezed his shoulder. You're not alone anymore, kid. I promise you that. But as she sat there comforting him, she had no idea just how much her life was about to change, or how much trouble was waiting just around the corner. Desiree drove home that night with her mind racing. She couldn't stop thinking about Tommy, about the way he'd cried in her car, about the fact that he was 19 and had been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love him most. She parked outside her apartment building and sat in silence for a moment. What was she going to do? She had 2 kids to feed. Rent was due in a week. She barely had enough to cover groceries. How could she possibly help someone else when she was barely keeping her own head above water? But then she thought about what her grandmother used to say. You don't need much to make a difference. You just need to care. She grabbed her phone and opened her notes app. She started typing. Things Tommy needs. Food, safe place to sleep, shower access, help finding better job, and someone to believe in him. She stared at the list. It felt overwhelming, but she'd figure it out one step at a time. She went inside and checked on the kids. Jamal was sprawled across his bed, one arm hanging off the side. Aaliyah was curled up with her stuffed rabbit, both sound asleep. Desiree kissed their foreheads and whispered, You're so lucky, and I'm going to teach you to see people like Tommy. The next morning, Desiree called her sister, Natasha. Girl, it's 7 a.m., Natasha groaned. This better be good. I need to tell you something, Desiree said, and I need you not to judge me. Natasha paused. What did you do? Desiree explained everything. The convenience store, Tommy's shaking hands, the car, the parents who abandoned him. When she finished, Natasha was silent for a long moment. So let me get this straight, Natasha finally said. You met a random kid at a store, and now you want to help him? Yes. Desiree, you can barely pay your own bills. I know. And you have 2 kids to take care of. I know that too, Natasha sighed. But you're going to do it anyway, aren't you? I have to, Tasha. You didn't see him. He's just a kid, and he's dying out there. Natasha was quiet again. Then she said, What do you need? Desiree felt a wave of relief. I need help figuring out how to get him off the streets. I can't bring him into my apartment, but maybe there's something else. Let me make some calls, Natasha said. I know someone at a shelter in the Bronx. Maybe they have space. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just promise me you'll be careful. You don't really know this kid. I know enough, Desiree said. I know he's a good person in a bad situation. After they hung up, Desiree got the kids ready for school. Jamal noticed she seemed distracted. You okay, Mom? He asked, pulling on his backpack. Yeah, baby. Just thinking about someone who needs help. Can we help them? Aaliyah asked, her big eyes wide. Desiree smiled. We're gonna try. That evening, Desiree went back to the convenience store. Tommy was behind the counter again, ringing up a customer. When he saw her, his face lit up for just a second. Then he caught himself and looked down. Desiree waited until the customer left, then approached. Hey, she said. Hey, Tommy replied quietly. You didn't have to come back. I know, but I wanted to. She leaned against the counter. I've been thinking, you can't keep living in your car. Tommy's face fell. I don't have a choice. Maybe you do. My sister knows someone who runs a shelter. It's not fancy, but it's warm, and they serve meals. Tommy shook his head. I can't go to a shelter. Why not? Because, he hesitated. Because I'm not homeless. Not really. I have a job. I have a car. Shelters are for people who have nothing. Desiree looked at him hard. Tommy, you haven't eaten in days. You're sleeping in a parking lot. You are homeless. His jaw tightened. I just need to save up a little more. Then I can get an apartment. How much do you make here? Minimum wage? About $200 a week after taxes? Desiree did the math in her head. Rent in the Bronx, even for a tiny studio, was at least $1,200 a month. He'd never save enough. Tommy, listen to me, she said gently. You need help. Real help, not just a sandwich. And I'm offering it. Please don't let pride get in the way. Tommy's eyes glistened. I don't want to be a burden. You're not. You're a kid who got dealt a bad hand. Let someone help you. He looked away. What if the shelter's full? Then we'll figure something else out. But we have to try. Tommy was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, he whispered. Okay. 2 days later, Desiree picked Tommy up after his shift and drove him to the Bronx Community Shelter on East 170th Street. It was a small building, old but clean. A sign in the window read, Everyone deserves dignity. Tommy stared at it as they walked inside. A woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes greeted them at the front desk. Her name tag read, Gloria. You must be Tommy, Gloria said warmly. Natasha told me about you. Tommy nodded, his hands shoved in his pockets. Gloria smiled. We have a bed available. It's in a shared room with 3 other guys, but it's warm and safe. We serve breakfast at 7 a.m. and dinner at 6 p.m. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. Tommy's throat bobbed. How much does it cost? Nothing. We're funded by donations. He looked at Desiree, then back at Gloria. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take the bed, Desiree said softly. Tommy nodded. Okay, yeah, thank you. Gloria handed him some paperwork to fill out. While he did, Desiree pulled Gloria aside. He's a good kid, Desiree said quietly. He just needs a chance, Gloria smiled. I can tell. Don't worry. We'll take care of him. When Tommy finished, Gloria showed him to his room. It was small, with 4 bunk beds and a single window. But it was clean and warm. Tommy set his backpack down on one of the beds and turned to Desiree. His eyes were red. I don't know how to thank you, he said, his voice breaking. Desiree stepped forward and hugged him. You don't have to. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself. Tommy hugged her back, and for a moment, he felt like a kid again, like someone actually cared. When Desiree left, she felt lighter than she had in days. But she had no idea that the hardest part was still ahead. Because helping Tommy wasn't just about getting him off the streets. It was about helping him believe he deserved better. And that was going to take more than just a warm bed. If you believe small acts can change lives, Like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs it today. 3 weeks passed. Desiree checked in on Tommy every few days. She'd stop by the shelter after her shifts, bringing him small things. A pair of gloves, a warm hoodie, sometimes just a coffee and a conversation. Tommy was eating regularly now. The shaking in his hands had stopped. His face had color again, but something else was still missing. Hope. One evening, Desiree found him sitting alone in the shelter's common room. He was staring at his phone, scrolling through job listings. "Any luck?" she asked, sitting down beside him. Tommy shook his head. "Everyone wants experience or a degree. I don't have either." "What about the convenience store?" "I quit last week." Desiree frowned. "Why?" "Because my manager found out I was staying here. He said it made the store look bad, so I left before he could fire me." Desiree's jaw clenched. "That's illegal," Tommy shrugged. "Doesn't matter. I needed to leave anyway. I couldn't stand being there anymore." "So, what are you going to do?" "I don't know." His voice was flat. "I've been applying everywhere. Restaurants, grocery stores, warehouses. No one's calling back." Desiree could see the defeat in his eyes. She'd seen it before in patients who'd given up. It scared her. "Tommy, look at me," she said firmly. He did. "You're not going to give up. Not after everything you've been through." "What's the point?" he muttered. "I'm never going to get out of this." "Yes, you are, because you're stronger than you think." Tommy laughed bitterly. "I'm not strong. I'm a dropout, living in a shelter. I'm exactly what my parents said I was. A disappointment." Desiree grabbed his hand. "Stop! Your parents were wrong. You're not a disappointment. You're a survivor." Tommy's eyes filled with tears. "I don't feel like one. I know, but you are, and I'm going to prove it to you." The next day, Desiree made a call. Her friend Marcus owned a small diner in Harlem called Mama's Kitchen. She'd known him for years. He was a good man, fair, kind, and he believed in second chances. "Marcus, I need a favor," Desiree said. "What's up, D?" "I know someone who needs a job. He's 19, no experience, but he's a hard worker, and he wants to be a chef." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "A chef? Huh?" "Yeah, he dropped out of college to follow that dream. His parents kicked him out because of it." "Damn, that's rough." "I know, but he's good people, Marcus. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe in him." Marcus sighed. "All right, tell him to come by tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll give him a shot." Desiree felt her chest swell. "Thank you, seriously." "Don't thank me yet. He's got to prove himself." "He will." The next morning, Desiree picked Tommy up from the shelter. She didn't tell him where they were going. She just said, "Get dressed. We have somewhere to be." Tommy was nervous the entire drive. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." When they pulled up in front of Mama's Kitchen, Tommy's eyes widened. "What is this?" he asked. "Your second chance," Desiree said. They walked inside. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. Marcus was behind the counter, wiping down the espresso machine. When he saw them, he smiled. "You must be Tommy," Marcus said, extending his hand. Tommy shook it hesitantly. "Yeah, that's me. Desiree tells me you want to be a chef." Tommy glanced at Desiree, then back at Marcus. Yeah, I do." "Ever worked in a kitchen before?" "No, but I'm willing to learn." Marcus studied him for a moment. Then he nodded. "All right, I'll give you a trial run. 2 weeks. You start as a prep cook, minimum wage. If you work hard and show me you're serious, I'll move you up." Tommy's mouth fell open. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. But I need to know you're committed. I don't have time for people who quit when things get hard." Tommy's voice shook. "I won't quit. I promise." Marcus smiled. "Then, welcome to Mama's Kitchen. You start Monday." Tommy looked at Desiree, his eyes brimming with tears. "You did this?" "You did this," Desiree corrected. "You just needed someone to open the door." Tommy threw himself into the job. He showed up early every day. He stayed late. He learned how to dice onions, prep vegetables, and work the grill. He watched the other cooks carefully, asking questions, taking notes. Marcus was impressed. "That kid's got fire in him," Marcus told Desiree one afternoon when she stopped by. "He's rough around the edges, but he's got potential." Desiree smiled. "I told you." After 6 weeks, Marcus promoted Tommy to line cook. After 3 months, he gave him a raise. Tommy was finally making enough to save money. Real money. One evening, Tommy called Desiree. "I found an apartment," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "It's a studio in the Bronx. Nothing fancy, but it's mine." Desiree felt tears spring to her eyes. "Tommy, that's amazing. I'm moving in next week, and I wanted to say thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here without you." "You would have found your way eventually." "No," Tommy said firmly. "I wouldn't have. I was ready to give up, but you didn't let me. You saw me when no one else did." Desiree wiped her eyes. "That's what kindness is, Tommy. It's seeing someone and choosing not to look away." 6 months later, Desiree brought Jamal and Aaliyah to Mama's kitchen for dinner. Tommy was behind the line, calling out orders. When he saw them walk in, his face broke into a huge grin. "Hold on," he told the other cooks. Then he walked over and crouched down in front of Jamal and Aaliyah. "You two must be the famous kids I've heard so much about," he said. Aaliyah giggled. "Are you the one my mom helped?" Tommy nodded. "Yeah, your mom saved my life." Jamal looked up at Desiree with wide eyes. "Really?" Desiree smiled. "I just asked if he was okay, that's all." "No," Tommy said, standing up. "You did more than that. You gave me hope when I had none left." He disappeared into the kitchen and came back a few minutes later with 3 plates. "I made you something special." It was the best meal Desiree had ever tasted. As they ate, Tommy sat with them for a few minutes. He told the kids about how their mom had changed his life, how one question, one act of kindness had set him on a completely different path. Jamal looked at his mom with pride. "You're like a superhero." Desiree laughed. "I'm not a superhero, baby. I'm just someone who chose to care." Tommy smiled. "Sometimes that's the same thing." A year after that night in the convenience store, Tommy became the head chef at Mama's Kitchen. He saved enough money to enroll in culinary school part-time. He reconnected with an old friend who helped him start healing from the wounds his parents had left. And he never forgot the woman who asked him why his hands were shaking. One evening, Desiree received a text from Tommy. It was a photo of him standing in front of a new restaurant. The sign above the door read, "Tommy's Table." The text said, "Opening next month. You and the kids get free meals for life. I mean it." Desiree stared at the photo, tears streaming down her face. She thought about that night, about how close she'd come to just paying for her groceries and walking away, about how easy it would have been to ignore the shaking hands and move on with her life. But she didn't. Because kindness isn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about acting when you see someone hurting. It's about asking the question no one else will ask. And sometimes, that one question can change everything. If this story touched your heart, remember that kindness doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be real. A simple question like, "Are you okay?" can save someone's life. Please like this video and subscribe to Kindness Spoke TV so we can keep sharing these powerful moments of compassion with the world. Because the world needs more people like Desiree